Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. My name is Angelia, and today it is time for Friday Reads on May the 12th. And welcome to my about 7th or 8th time of trying to get through the first sentence of this video. I have the world's worst case of muckledy mouth this morning. I can't even get the first sentence out. Well, whatever happens now that I've gotten past the first sentence, perhaps it shall be smooth sailing, but we shall see. Anyway, welcome to my channel if you are new. If you are a new subscriber, I'm so glad that you have joined us. If you have just wandered in here for the first time, please, I hope that you will stay, enjoy the video, and like or subscribe. All right, so what's going on? I don't know if Mother's Day is an everywhere holiday or a U.S. holiday, but that takes place this weekend. So happy Mother's Day if you are celebrating. There's a couple of gifts that I am eyeballing that are sitting up on top of our hutch for me. So I shall see what my family has found for me this weekend. I'm actually not going to see my daughter in person for a couple of weeks because her semester just ended and she started a new job. But she does have a long weekend coming up that we're going to get together. So it's kind of a two-part Mother's Day for me. So let me tell you a funny story about something that happened last night before we get into the books, because I just have to, this is just, the coincidence is just too weird. So yesterday afternoon, Stephen was trying to solve a problem he's been having with his electric guitar practice with some feedback and loud buzzing and weird electrical things because of a non-grounded outlet. So he attempted, I'll cut the story short, but he attempted a do-it-yourself thing that perhaps a non-electrician should not have messed with, which resulted in a scary little spark and put it into his project. So he tried to do something and he backed off of the something, and then it seemed okay, right? Okay, so that's where we start. So a couple hours later, and when that happened, it short-circuited the garbage disposal. But we flipped the breaker and then it was fine. All right, so moving forward into the evening, it's time to make dinner. I'm in the kitchen, I'm sauteing vegetables. I'm gonna make some tostadas, nice Tex-Mex dinner. All of a sudden, whoop, and all the power goes out in the whole house. Well, I was not amused, and I thought, now, how much is this gonna cost? You know, the aftermath of trying to avoid a cost, and then this cataclysmic thing has occurred, and it's no small order of business in Texas in May when your power goes out, because immediately you're thinking of the refrigerator and the air conditioning. So, and it was mid 80s at dinner time yesterday. So Steven starts calling around to see if there's any electricians that work later. Of course, nobody does. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to run out and buy another cooler, a bunch of ice, and try to rescue some of the stuff in the fridge. And, you know, there's dinner sitting like in a saucepan, half cooked, and the whole thing is just not a happy moment in our household. And so after about half an hour of frittering around with this problem, finally go outside, and Stephen realizes that the garage, which has a separate breaker box and is detached from the house, is also out. At the very beginning when it happened, I'd looked across the street and I saw a light on in the house across the street. So I thought, well, it's us. And the business behind us, we could see lights. But we went out again, and there was a guy, you know, 2 doors down, who was sitting outside, and we found out that actually the entire side of our street, the whole thing was out. And then a few minutes later, here comes a truck down the back alley with one of those tall cherry picker things, and apparently a tree had fallen on a power line, or a branch had fallen. So somehow in the great cosmos, it decided to play a trick on us with coincidence and make all of the power shut out at the very moment that we had been toying with electricity. So Stephen was exonerated, sort of. He still did something I'm wandering about inside the wall of the house. But he was exonerated unless somehow it wasn't really the tree after all, and he somehow knocked out the whole block. But anyway, power was restored. The fans twirled, the AC blew, the drinks remained cold, and all is well. We were able to watch TV last night. We're on season 4. We're on season 4 of The Wire, which is AKA the school season. It continues to be excellent. It's just the best show for casting everybody perfectly, and even the tiniest roles, even somebody who gets 5 minutes on screen just nails their parts, and everybody's memorable, and there's no complete heroes or villains. It's so nuanced. I just love that show. Anyway, we're enjoying our rewatch. So let's move on to books. So the first thing that I read this week was A Room with a View by Ian Forster, and it was one of the volumes in this triple book set. And it's not a very long book. I don't know how long it is in other editions, and this one's hard to tell because the print doesn't take up a lot on the page, and it's kind of large. So it says it's 318 pages, but I would say it's probably in the low 200s if it was printed normally. It went fast. It didn't feel very long. So A Room with a View is Forster's third novel, and we're reading all of his novels throughout the year in this Forster read-along. So, and we're reading them in order, interspersed with some other things. So we read Where Angels Fear to Tread earlier in the year, which was his first novel, and then The Longest Journey was his second one, and that was the one that I DNF'd because it was just so boring. And then this was his third novel, and a lot of people, this is what they think of when they think of Ian Forster. If they've only read one or they've seen the movie, they have it in their mind that Ian Forster writes light, kind of fluffy, romantic comedy type stories. And that's not really accurate. This is his lightest work. And on the surface, it is a bit of a romantic comedy, but if you are careful not to read too fast through the breezy style, you will find a lot more to the story and a lot more to the characters especially. There's much to savor in the dialogue in this book, and I really enjoyed it. This was a reread for me, but I read it long ago, and I really enjoyed reading it again. And I do think that the classic movie from, I guess from the 80s, the one with Helena Bonham Carter and not Julian Barnes, that's an author. Julian Sands, the one who went missing. I'll double check. Anyway, I really like that version, that movie version. I think it's pretty accurate. Basically, it is the story of a young woman named Lucy Honeychurch who goes on a trip at the beginning of the book to Italy with her chaperone, who is a middle-aged cousin of hers named Charlotte Bartlett. And when they arrive, there's an assortment of other British folks, some from her very own town, staying at the pension in Italy. And so it's almost like the entire drawing room of a stuffy, uptight afternoon after church has come along with her on this vacation, and she feels stifled. She wants to escape from these confines. She's having notions of female independence, but she's just at war within herself between what's expected of her and the comfortable life and breaking free and trying something else. And there's angels and demons sitting on each of her shoulders in the form of characters in this book who are encouraging her in one direction or another. It's quite funny. There are a lot of very memorable supporting cast members. My favorite supporting cast members like we're doing a play, my favorite supporting characters are Mr. Emerson, who is the father of a young man named George, that is very interested in Lucy, and also Charlotte, the cousin, who is she's hard to like, and but the book is not entirely unsympathetic to her. She's hard to like, she's prickly, she's uptight. Lucy calls her frozen at one point. Lucy struggles with trying to finally acknowledge that she just really can't stand her, but she's trying to be kind to her. But Charlotte is she's a prig, she's snobby. She always has to make these self-martyring comments all the time and lay guilt trips, and she's just really a piece of work in this book. I really love this character. I don't want to do a spoiler, but where we leave off with this character is something I really savor. There's also, as I mentioned, Mr. Emerson, who puts so many seeds of discontent in Lucy's mind and kind of helps her on her journey towards independence. There's just a lot to really enjoy. There's beautiful descriptions, and there's queer coding for sure. I won't tell you where it is so you can find it for yourself, but there are it's quite a pleasure to read. And if you have never read it, do yourself a favor, enjoy this at your earliest convenience. So that was Room with a View, which I guess, does it tell us, it was published in 1908. So it's Edwardian. That's our time period here. All right, so alongside A Room with a View, I was reading Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts by Rebecca Hall. And this is a graphic nonfiction book. The illustrator is Hugo Martinez. And this is a book about Rebecca Hall's research into the history of women-led slave revolts. Rebecca Hall has a background as both a lawyer and then an academic studying in the field of race and gender. And she became interested in this notion, and she focuses this research that is presented in this book on 18th century revolts. So she wants to look at a time that is not covered as often, and definitely a topic that she felt was not covered at all. There's a couple of things happening in this book. So there's the stories themselves of what she found out, what things that happened in history, both on slave ships and in the colonies. And if you are a nerdy retired librarian, you do enjoy the suspense of somebody facing obstacles during their research. And that was also led to one of her main points in this book, was that the reason why it was hidden history was partly from purposeful omissions, but partly because it just laid there in plain sight, because people then, and even people now, did not perceive women as being capable of either physically leading a revolt, or mentally able to organize a revolt. And her thesis is that what we feel cannot happen, it's just as if it didn't happen. If we don't think it's possible, we just don't see it, even when it's quite plain in front of us. So these incidents were not properly recorded. They happened again and again, and it's really quite fascinating. It did remind me of The Deep, that I read recently by Rivers Solomon, which imagined a society of aquatic people who lived under the sea, whose ancestors were pregnant women thrown off of slave ships. But it also reminded me of another book. It reminded me of The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, because of the part, if you've read that book, the main character at one point decides to pursue I think a master's or a PhD in history, and she begins to research primary documents and archives about the slave ancestry in her region and in her own family. And some of her journey of research, and also with that fictional character and this real historian discovering some of the personal impact that happens from learning that history and the emotional toll that it has, and how really we all need to know the history, and we all need to share in some of that toll, even if it's not part of our own personal ancestry, but it is our collective history. So this was very, very interesting. And I also really loved the way that the author and the illustrator worked together to convey both the facts and the emotions in the artwork. And I'm not a huge nonfiction reader, but I do like a good narrative nonfiction. And so I really did enjoy this book. Which leads us to what I'm currently reading. I got a few things to share with you. I'm reading Mr. Flood's Last Resort by Jess Kidd, and I am loving this book. I am loving the characters. The plot has me all tied up, and the way she writes and her word choices, I got maybe 15 pages in before the first time I hit a spot where I had to just stop and go, whoa, slow down, roll back. I want to read that passage again. And just the way she wrote that, the word choices, sometimes they're very funny, darkly funny. Sometimes they're just beautifully rendered. I just love the way she writes. So, basic synopsis. A woman named Maud works as a caregiver for elderly people, and she is sent out to this job that many people have quit and fled to work for Mr. Flood. And he lives in a dilapidated Victorian mansion. The time period is current, but his house is not. And he is 6'9" and very skinny. He's just described often like a enormous spider scuttling around through his house. And he is grouchy, mean-spirited, profane, strange, dirty, smelly. He's a terrible hoarder. He claims that there's no bathroom in his house, and he has not bathed in who knows how long. He likes to eat sardines out of the can and then just throw the can somewhere, and there's just junk everywhere. It's just absolutely horrible. And here's how Maud describes the scene. And she's considering the fact that, according to local legend, the last person on the job actually had to go to a psychiatric facility after working for Mr. Flood. It wouldn't do to take the fate of Sam Hebden lightly. Here are working conditions, the likes of which have not been seen since Charles Booth's day. Whole days trapped in a maze of clutter, with a bockety old maniac liable to rear up at any moment, all clacking dentures and spittle-flecked gizzards. Despite his age, with his speed and long legs, he would run me to ground in an instant if today was anything to go by. My only defense is a constant vigilance and a willingness to kick an octogenarian right up his hole. So that's Maud, and that's the job. So Maud is trying to clear some crap out of this house, and basically just every day clear some junk and avoid Mr. Flood and leave him a dinner. But this is easier said than done. And early on, she actually finds a picture in a bottle, and in the picture there's a little boy and a little girl. The little girl's face is burnt out as if somebody touched it with a cigarette, and her name is also scribbled out on the back. The little boy is identified as Mr. Flood's son, who, by the way, is a character who comes around and seems to be nefarious. So she goes home and describes all this to her friend Renata, who lives downstairs from her. Renata is an agoraphobic former magician's assistant, and she is fabulous. This character is so great, and I'm not going to tell you too much about her because I don't want to spoil the joy of getting to know Renata. But Renata is sure that there is a murder mystery afoot, and in no time at all, she has made up a murder board, and she has all these theories, but she can't leave her house to go pursue any of them. And she's also sure that there's a poltergeist in the house who's trying to tell Maud things to solve the mystery. And Maud is more, she likes to think that she's more down to earth and that she doesn't believe in ghosts. But Maud has personal baggage of her own. And Maud at all times sees Catholic saints around her. They're floating around like ghosts and they talk to her. So Maud has issues of her own, and some of the reason why Maud is the way she is revealed gradually in alternating chapters. So we have suspense, we have fascinating characters, we have a mystery that we're not sure exactly what the mystery is, a house full of hoarded, horrible stuff, a wonderfully demented old man, and a couple other characters. And there's even creepy dolls. Creepy dolls again. Creepy dolls again. I can't believe it. But I am enjoying this so much. And what else did I mark here that I wanted to share with you? I put it here for a reason. Okay, I wanted to read you this little part. Just another example of the descriptions that are just slaying me in this book. And none of these are spoilers, but this is the first time that you see Renata's apartment, and this is what's in Renata's entryway. The twin icons of her life, Jesus Christ and Johnny Cash, look down from the wall, bestowing their mixed blessings. Jesus Christ reveals his sacred heart, a rinsed orb of holy light. His eyes are gentle with mercy, and his bright curls fall softly onto his robed shoulders. Johnny Cash reveals nothing. His face is dyspeptic. He purses his lips against life's fairground ride of moral vicissitude, damnation, and the dwindling hope of redemption. Our money is on Cash. How did I live my whole life without the phrase, life's fairground ride of moral vicissitude? I don't know how I got this far. So I am just absolutely loving this book. And another thing that, I don't know, I'll probably have to share something else with you by the time I get through it. I'm about halfway through. So I am all set for a fabulous weekend reading the rest of Mr. Flood's Last Resort by Jess Kidd. And there's no possible way that this book is going to take a bad turn and let me down. I just know it. I might start my project of reading this book on the side, How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. And as I talked before, I'm going to read it bit by bit, but I'm ready to start it now because I wanted to read Wake first. So I don't know which novel I'm going to read next. And I also don't know what I'm going to do on Tuesday's video. The world is it's not my oyster because I'm vegetarian, but I don't know. The world is my hummus platter. But we shall see. I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy your Mother's Day if you are celebrating. Otherwise, just have a great bookish weekend. Let me know what you have read this week that was fabulous, and I will be back on Tuesday with a video of unknown content. I'm open to suggestion. Anyway, have a great time. See you later. Bye.